Hey y'all, welcome and welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Morgan, and here we do a little bit of all things creepy, whether that be reading scary stories like we're going to do today, talking about real scary paranormal encounters that I've had, talking about folklore, scary books, scary movies. We do all of that here, and I post daily, so if all that sounds cool, I would love to have you here. Now, if you have any stories that you would like for me to read in one of these videos, I do upload several a week. Please send them to this email address and just add YouTube in your subject line so they don't accidentally end up on TikTok. But with all that being said, let's read some stories. My name's Katie, I don't mind you saying my name, and I've been binge watching your videos on my phone or TV while cleaning because they're interesting. I've been watching for about 2 weeks now, and I've been a fan for a year or so. So since I've been watching your videos, I've had weird stuff happening all around my house. I'll wake up at exactly 3:22 a.m. every single night, and I've been hearing clapping. I find handprints in my window every time I wake up at that time. At this time also, I'll realize it's very hot in my room, but cold everywhere else in the house. Whenever I just lay there waiting to fall back asleep again, I hear the clapping. Not several claps, it just goes clap, pause for a few seconds, and then another clap. I've tried saging my house, but it only works for around a day, then the activity happens again the next night. During the day, I always feel as if I'm being watched or followed around my house, yet no one's around. I've only lived in this home for around 4 months, and it's an old home, 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom. If you could tell me how to make it go away, I'd appreciate it. First piece of advice: don't sage. Instead, use dragon's blood incense. You can use a rosemary lavender herb bundle if you still want to use a bundle. You can use a stick of selenite. You can use witch's bells. Literally anything but sage. Sage tends to aggravate things and make them worse. So try any of that. Do a full cleansing of your house and then fill that space back in with positive energy. And don't forget when you're cleansing to open a window. Because sometimes, like whenever I first started out, I never knew why my cleansings weren't working, but I wasn't opening a window, so I was essentially just chasing the negative energy around the house with an incense stick. I would be pissed. No wonder activity got worse. I would literally make that person's life terrible. So open a window and then refill back up your space with good energy. Alright, next story. I live in Wisconsin and I'm a big fan of your account. I love listening to other people's ghost stories on YouTube when I'm doing anything, so I wanted to send in my own. I've always believed in the paranormal ever since I was little. These stories that I'm about to tell are my 4 biggest stories that I think make up a good amount of my paranormal experiences. I'm always open to telling some of the other paranormal stories I have if you'd like to hear them. Encounter number 1. When I was young, at least to the point that I could register any memories about this kind of encounter, I was very in tune with the paranormal. One thing that still happens to this day is getting my name called in the middle of the night. Now, at this time, my mom used to check up on me in the middle of the night because she's a paranoid insomniac, so I was pretty used to waking up with her talking to me. However, these encounters were different. It was like a girl my age at the time was talking to me, but it was never a full conversation. In that girl's voice, I'd wake up from a dead sleep to my name being called very close by, which was unusual because it was nearly impossible to wake me up from a dead sleep. So being woken up to my name being called and it sounded close to my head was weird. But after the same thing happened multiple times, I would get used to waking up with my name being called. My most recent encounter, though, it was a bit different, to say the least. I was lying in bed in a dead sleep, which is hard to wake me up from again, and I wake up to that safe girl's voice. But it wasn't her calling my name this time. It was screaming, like a child screaming in pain, and it kept me awake for the rest of the night, unlike the other times when I'd be able to fall back asleep after a minute or two. To note, I don't have any other siblings at all, so no kids are in the house. When I woke up from these encounters, the house was dead silent besides the soft sound of the TV playing. Encounter number 2. Before I moved into this house that I live in now, there was this other house. I was young and terrified of sleeping in the dark, and with my door open, I'd gaslight myself into thinking nothing was there. But every time I woke up in the middle of the night with the bedroom door open, there was always 2 dark figures. One was a female. She would sit on the living room couch. Note, I can see the living room from my bedroom with the door open. The second was a man, though the man in particular had no notable facial features like the lady did. He scared me half to death. He was always standing. The closest that he ever got was to my doorway, but never in my room. But now back to the lady. Every time she was there, the man was always further away from my doorway. He'd be completely gone if she were looking in my direction when I woke up, and she'd always lift her hand and wave to me as if saying I can go back to sleep. She was watching over me. She felt like a protector, to say the least. I felt safe with her. When she wasn't around, the man was as close as he could get. I would always lose sleep because of him, and it wasn't like he had a smile on his face even if he didn't. He'd only go away if the lady was there or if the sunlight came through my window. Encounter number 3. This story and the last story are from the current house that I live in now. So I've always had a dumb fear of the basement. Even now, even though my parents' bedroom is in the basement, it seems stupid from an outside view, but to me this fear is justified, especially now. Some context. My family's always had a running joke that we have a goblin living in the basement because our belongings would disappear and reappear. That joke was from the old house, but I think something's residing in the current house's basement. It started just as a feeling of being watched, which I was pretty used to already. But now it's chasing me up the stairs. I'd go downstairs to my parents' bedroom, then to the separate room where the washer and dryer are in the other part of the basement. When I left the room and closed the door behind me, I felt like something followed me out of that part of the basement. After a moment or two of standing on the side where my parents' bed is, I would bolt up the stairs, whistling and running. It felt like this creature was chasing me. Now, whatever this thing is, I can only imagine it chasing me in my head, but it doesn't feel like a hallucination. It feels like it's happening. You just can't see it. What this thing looks like in my head is a humanoid body, on all fours, chasing me up the stairs until I get to shut the door behind me. Maybe I'm a little paranoid and gaslighting myself into thinking it's real, but it's still scary nonetheless. So, you mentioned the running joke about the goblin in your basement. It could be a fade that latched onto your family because they like to take things. Encounter number 4. Ending with a lighthearted story because I can. In my room, I have the biggest closet in the house, big as you can fit a twin-size bed in horizontally. It has 3 doors, and it's where my ghost resides. His name's Victor, and he's a frat boy. I did a pendulum reading with him before, and he's not a dangerous spirit. He's like a friend whom you can't see. It's like he's listening to me talk to myself, and when I'm being indecisive, he chooses me through my conscience. I think the only weird thing that he's ever done is grab my toes in the middle of the night before I got my loft bed. He stopped doing that now that I introduced him, saying that he likes feet. He's probably the best relationship I've ever had with a ghost or the paranormal. Yeah, that one's not scary, thankfully. Yay, we didn't end on a scary one. Alright, next story. Hey Morgan, I just wanted to start off by saying, 1. Did I say next story? Next story. Hey Morgan, I just wanted to start off by saying that 1, you are absolutely gorgeous and your makeup literally always slays. Thank you. Don't worry, I'm a fellow female, not some creepy dude. And 2, I absolutely love your content. Not only is it very interesting but entertaining, but also gives me some insight to the things that I've personally experienced. So thank you for sharing yours and other people's experiences. Now to get into some of my many experiences. One of my first was when I was very little and living in this old farmhouse in West Branch, Iowa. It was pretty old, and if this tells you anything, after we moved, a zombie movie was filmed in it. Unfortunately, I don't know what the movie is, though. Okay, well, I need to know. This is valuable information to me. Anyways, I remember this house very well, but not this experience. At the time, I slept in one room by myself, and my brother slept in another. My parents told me that every night I would have the exact same night terror. While having these night terrors, I would get out of bed, sit in the corner of my bedroom, scream and cry while pointing at the closet in the opposite corner that I was in. My parents never told me if I talked about what I saw in those dreams, but it was creepy enough for them to move me into my brother's room with him, and use my old room as a personal gym. Once I moved rooms, I never had night terrors again. My second experience was when I was around 4 to 6 years old, and this one I actually do remember. At the time, my grandpa had just passed away from some sort of illness, and me and my family were having a little dinner at my grandma's house. While we were sitting at the table eating, the fire alarm goes off. When I look over, I see my grandpa standing under the fire alarm. It was a very wholesome experience to me, and I'm not sure if anyone else saw the same thing. Now to the more recent things. At the time, me and my mom and my 2 younger brothers and my grandma lived in an old house in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. I lived in the basement and had 2 sides to it that were separated by stairs that acted like a wall. In this other side of the basement, the oldest of my younger brothers had his room, but that'll be important later. While living in this house and sleeping in the basement, I always got a feeling that something bad had happened in there at some point. I'm not sure if it's just my head being weird, but I always thought it was a boy around 19 years old. I never found any history of the house about it, but that's just the feeling I had. I never got a bad feeling from this entity, and I didn't really mind it being there. During this time, I lived with my dad half of the time, and when I would get back, my lights that I'd plugged in would be unplugged, and that would happen a lot. I said something like, dude, that's kind of annoying to have to plug those back in. If you're going to unplug it, just plug it back in. And then after that, it didn't happen again. Later on in that same room, I was trying to fall asleep, and unfortunately I suffer from insomnia, so I was kind of just laying there for hours not being able to. I was facing the wall when I felt this pressure of someone putting their hand on my back to try to lay down. I didn't really know what to do, so I kind of just laid there in shock. I didn't feel like I was in danger, but it still scared me. Eventually, I whipped my head around and saw nothing. I asked it to not be in my bed, and when I meant it, it never happened again. On my brother's side of the basement, there was also the laundry area. One night when I went to go get my laundry, it was super dark. I didn't even get 2 steps before I had almost like a vision, for lack of better words, of something that looked like fear. That's the only way I can describe it, running at me. It only happened once, but I still vividly remember it. Later again, also in that same bedroom, and it started off by me hearing creaking in the vents. I didn't really think anything of it since it was an old house, but I did take note. Eventually, I started hearing whispering. This terrified me. Looking back, it could have definitely been the 2 entities of either side of the basement arguing, but it didn't sound pleasant. In this same house during 2020, I was in my grandma's room that was upstairs, while she was at work doing online learning. The fan was on and I was quite cold, so I went to turn it off. Once it slowed down a little bit, I stopped it with my hand. Once I sat back down on the bed, it started moving again. I kind of jokingly said, "Can you stop that? It's cold in here." The second I finished my sentence, it stopped, and I do believe that whatever it was upstairs was different than any of the things downstairs. I have many, and I do mean many more stories if you'd like to hear them. My mom and I are very in tune with the spiritual world, and I genuinely believe that we will always have experiences. Most are just strange but not bad things, but we've definitely had some more frightening things happen. Sorry this email's so long, I just thought it'd be fun to have my experiences out there and have people's thoughts on them. If you want me to clear up any confusion, let me know. Also, sorry to email you again, but I have a question. I've been scrolling through your feed all day pretty much, and I was wondering if watching things and looking up what certain things are can attract entities. I have a motion sensor LED nightstand light across from my bed in my room, not the same house from my other experiences, and I've never had an experience in this house, but it's been going off without me even being close enough to trigger it. None of my cats are in the room. I don't have a bad feeling of it or anything. I was just wondering if giving attention to the fact that paranormal exists can attract them. So yes, in a way, it's a good idea to always spiritually lock your phone screens and just your screens in general that you're consuming this content on. I will link a video below that I made on how to do that because that is a really good idea. But anyways, I guess that is all for today. This video is a little bit on the shorter side. That's fine. I accidentally picked 2 of the same story, so that's probably why. But anyways, I hope you guys have a fantastic day, and I will see you tomorrow when we talk all about rules of the Appalachian Mountains that you need to follow if you are vacationing this summer. All right.